Hi. I wanted to shortcut the introductions. My degree's in computer science, and I had a real job for about 12 years building systems. And then I started doing project management stuff. I was looking over here, and project management in theory is something you guys talk about. So I am the token project manager in the group. And what I want to do is talk with you about estimation. And I really appreciate the introduction, because when I was a systems engineer, I too hated doing estimates. And I distinctly recall I was building a system that was really hard. I was the chief architect of a system that was really complex. We were building some technology that did not exist anywhere in the world, teaching computers to read. And all we had was an idea and some algorithms we'd done in prototype mode. And the question was, could we design a database that didn't exist and build some algorithms that didn't exist? And how much was it going to cost and how long it was going to take? And I distinctly remember I was working for IBM at the time, and somebody said, "So we have a crude idea. How much is this going to cost and how long it's going to take?" And I looked the guy in the eye and said, "I have no flippin' idea. Let me keep records, and when I'm done, I'll tell you how much it cost and how long it takes." And I didn't know at the time, but then I could send that information off to Michael Mann. He could graph it and tell me, how am I doing? Or send it to Capers. He could say, well, it was this many function points, and here's how you did. And I was very fortunate that the guy did not fire me. He took me under his wing and said, you don't understand. The IBM Corporation has to decide whether or not to spend about $10 million funding this project. And we need to know, is that cost effective? Oh. Okay, well, I guess that's reasonable. And basically, the guy took me under his wing, and we spent about a week in a room making notes and scribbling. I think we estimated the thing was going to cost $5 million. When it was all done, it cost about $10 million. And that was acceptable. That was a rough order of magnitude estimate. And so what I do, what I do for a living is I coach project managers. I teach project management. I do project autopsies of really big projects that didn't go well. I try to keep projects on the rails if they're not going well. And one of the key parts to that is estimates. So my goal over the next hour and a half is to give you some tips and techniques that absolutely will work in the real world. So here we go. What is an estimate? It's a calculation or prediction, actually it's a combination of the two, about the size of something or the magnitude of something. A lot of times when we're estimating, we're trying to estimate effort, or we'll commit arithmetic and convert effort into duration. That's what project managers care about, right? How much is this going to cost? How long is it going to take? It's a classic estimate. And so the big problem we have right now is different cultures have different meanings for the term. When I talk about an estimate, what I'm talking about is a prediction. It's a prediction. That is useful to me. That's what I want to talk about. How can I predict with more or less accuracy the size or magnitude of something? A lot of times, the pointy-haired boss of Dilbert fame has a different definition of the term estimate, and it causes us trouble. Some people think of an estimate as a commitment. It's a different thing. A commitment is a promise. I'm not talking about a promise. I'm not talking about a promise. I'm saying here, for the purposes of your making your business decision, here's my best guess. If you want a promise, it's going to be different. So we need to sort out. When you want an estimate, what do you want? Do you want a prediction or do you want a promise? Another way estimates get used is a goal. Tim Lister gave a talk. He went on for an hour, but the title of the talk sold it all. And I'm a big Tim Lister fan. I'm not making light of it, but just the title said it all. The title of his talk was, I Need It in October. How long is it going to take? When you need it is not terribly relevant if you're asking me for a prediction. But it's reasonable to have a target. That's just a different thing. A target is a different thing from an estimate. Now, I've heard estimates described in some cultures as the absolute soonest, I cannot convince the boss this can't possibly be done. Okay? That's not what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is an honest prediction. An honest prediction. So, it's not a promise, it's not a target. Not a promise, not a target. Those are different discussions. So, what I wanted to do was a demonstration. For this demonstration, you need a crayon and paper, or you could do it on your electronic device. But I want you to write down 4 different numbers. Don't do it yet. 4 different numbers. A, B, C, and D. That's not the numbers, those are the labels for the numbers. If I talked for an hour and a half, the snoring would create a health hazard. So instead, we're going to do some stuff. First thing we're going to do is an estimate. How long is this ribbon? How long is this ribbon? Make sure you get it. You guys in the cheap seats, make sure you get a good look at it. How long is this? No whining. How long is this ribbon? I want a written numerical answer from each of you. Written numerical answer from each of you. How long is this ribbon? Write it down. You're stuck with it. You can't change it. How long? This is ribbon A. This is ribbon A. People think I'm using the same ribbon. No, this is ribbon A. Now that you know how to play the game, let me show you ribbon B. Ribbon B. This is ribbon B. How long is ribbon B? Okay. Written numerical answer from each of you. You may not have fun, but you will not sleep. Ribbon C. Ribbon C. Ribbon C. People wonder how to go to these conferences and eat donuts and don't blow up. It's the aerobics. All right. Ribbon D. Rick, thank you for the introduction. Come on up here. I won't hurt you. I'm taking my meds. We're good. If you'd stand right here for me. You have the worst chair in the house. This is ribbon D. How tall are you, Rick? About 5.5 feet tall. You have the worst chair. Get a look at both ends. Ribbon D, written numerical answer from each of you. Thank you, sir. When I do this with smaller groups, I solicit data from everybody. That's going to take too long. We'll do a subset. Nice random sample. If you have a birthday up to 10 days ago or 10 days going forward, please stand up. I'm not going to hurt you. I just need to gather some data from you. Happy birthday to you. Okay. Come on, I don't believe it. There's only 4 people at birthdays? A, B, C, D. What'd you write down? There's no wrong answers. 5 meters. 8 meters. 2, 6 feet. See, change. They're in the middle, right? It's like Michael was saying that where they use the meters and the feet in the navigation system. Awesome. What you got? All right. Let's see. Thank you very much. Let's see. If you have a birthday in November, stand up. I need some more data. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Just rattle them off. A, B, C, D. What you got? What'd you write down? He's making this crap up. Yeah, I can't follow instructions. What do you have? Great. Go around the room. Oops, wait a minute. 6, 12. Great. Awesome. Thank you very much for the data. Now what I'm going to do is a little bit of data analysis. Hopefully Michael and Capers aren't here. What I'm about to do is cheating. I have enough statistics to know that. And reasonable, because I've worked in the real world. When I have a bunch of untrained people giving me estimates, I will tend to throw away the highest and lowest values. I'm cherry picking the data because I figure the high and low values are people that are like nearsighted or crazy. So throw away the high values, we lose the 42. Throw away the low values by the 5 meters, I'm going to call that about 16 feet, forgive me for the rounding error. Low values, we lose the 3. Leaves me on the low end with a 6, and the high end is going to be about 20. You actually got to see ribbon A for a longer period of time than all of the other ribbons. Why do your estimates suck so hard? What was hard about A? Huh? It was all balled up. The technical term for all balled up is it was complex. You couldn't see it all, right? You couldn't see it all. I don't want you to feel bad that you suck at your estimates of A. You couldn't see it all. That was a guess. Now, ribbon B, you could see it all. Yeehaw! Whoop, 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 whoop. Come over here. Okay, 8 meters. I'm going to translate to about 26 feet. Now we're looking for the high values. Nothing personal. Lose the 50. Low values. We lose the 6. Leaves me on the low end with 6, 8. And on the high end with 26, I believe. Correct? Close counts. Okay, so now 6 to 26. Apparently being able to see it all did not help. Why was ribbon B hard to estimate? Why do we have so much variety in those numbers? Say again? It was changing. It was a moving target. Why else? Distractions. Thank you. Someday I'm going to fall over dead doing that demonstration, and I would like to think I'm giving my life for some purpose. Yeah, there's distractions, there's kind of a big snarl, I'm running around, moving target. What else? Why was B hard? Why was B hard? No basis for comparison. All you can tell is it's big, probably longer than you are. It's a big, snarly mess. Okay. Well, actually, ribbons A and B are exactly the same length. 42 feet, 4 inches. 42 feet, 4 inches. What I want to point out is of all the data points surveyed, only one person was high. The rest of you were low. That's not because you're foolish. It's because that's how our skinny brains work. We don't deal with complexity naturally. complexity was not an important part of your ancestors' survival. Okay? Edward, you know what? Millions of years ago, on the African savannah, your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmother and my great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather were creeping around on the African savannah looking for food and water. And they peeked up over the hill and they saw down at the watering hole lions. They saw lions. And in some long forgotten language, your ancestor turned to my ancestor and said, "Shit, lions." And they crept away. And there's nobody sitting in that chair. And the reason there's nobody sitting in that chair is the guy who would be sitting in that chair, his ancestor was on the same hunting party. And they were a mutant that could deal with complexity. And your ancestor said, "Shit, lions." And that there, his ancestor, this guy right here, who's not here, ancestor stood up and said, "My goodness, you're right. There's 34 lions down there." Actually, there's 16 adult lions and 18 juveniles. Well, actually, there's eight toddlers. And that gave our ancestors enough of a head start that that guy got pulled out of the gene pool. Okay? Humans don't deal with complexity well. If I overwhelm you with complexity, you will underestimate. Let that soak in. Most of you have heard a really bad rule. I'm going to say this again, a really bad rule for estimating. And the really bad rule for estimating is this. Take your best guess and double it. Don't do that. Don't do that. I'm going to give you some alternatives. It turns out that if you are overwhelmed with complexity, it ends up being an exponential decay. If I overwhelm you with hundreds of objects, your range of error will be in the thousands. If I overwhelm you with thousands of objects, your range of error will be in the hundreds of thousands. It's an exponential decay. Doubling won't help, but it will destroy your credibility. We don't deal well with complexity. That's a problem. Humans have it. It's our skinny brains. So 42 feet 4 inches is the correct answer for both of these. Having I realized I cheated. I cherry-picked the data, so I pulled out the only one that was over, and over here I pulled out the only one that was close. He didn't write it down, so he doesn't get credit. But the lion's share of you, no pun intended, the lion's share of you were low, okay? Now, what about ribbon C? I presented ribbon C the same way as A, except I avoided the leap down that I was worried was going to break the microphone, okay? So, for ribbon C, 2 meters is about 6.5 feet. Throw away the high values, lose a 10. I can't throw away multiples, that would be cheating. Throw away the low values, lose a 3, leaves me with a 3. I want to point out we have a multiplier here of a little more than 3, multiplier here of a little more than 4. Now we're back down to a little more than 3 as a multiplier. The range has narrowed here. Why? Why was your range for C tighter than your range for... there was less to deal with, right? You could see the ends. It was smaller. That's relevant because no matter how much I try to distract you and whoop and wail and snarl it up, I can't fool you that 6 feet 8 inches, let me spoil the surprise, 6 feet 8 inches of ribbon, I can't fool you to think that's 25. I can't. Now we come down here. We throw away the high values, lose a 7. Throw away the low values, lose a 6. Leaves me on the low end with a 6, the high end with a 7. Why are your answers for D in a nice, tidy range? You had a known point of reference. When I asked Rick to stand up here, very few of you were thinking, I wish he'd move so we could see that ribbon better. They're going, it's a gimme. So Rick's about 5.5 feet tall. Now I can narrow my focus to the difference from the known quantity to the end of the ribbon. And since humans are not very good at estimating distances without practice, you still suck. But actually we have a nice tidy range we can work with. So if I spoiled the surprise and told you that predictions are about the future. There are no facts about the future. So there is no magic sauce I can give you that's going to help you accurately predict the future. Just get over that. Wouldn't it be nice if instead of accurately predicting the future, which would be overselling, if I could give you a process to get it into a reasonable range where reasonable people are likely to agree? Okay, that's my goal. So I don't lower your expectations here. How to estimate anything? Our goal is to come up with something reasonable people would agree on that's in a reasonable range. Okay? And like I said, 6 feet 8 inches. So you guys, you are trainable because by D you were doing better. Okay? Now, don't try this at home. I spent $40 going to a lecture to show me how to do this. If you try this at home, it will be much harder for you. I'm going to prove to you, because I could have just made crap up to make the numbers look good. I'm going to prove to you this ribbon is 42 feet 4 inches. Check it out. The fingers never leave the hand. It's not elastic. I'm not cheating. The reason I went to the lecture is because if you try this at home, you will create a snarled mess that takes half an hour to untangle. It turns out clowns and magicians care about how to fold ribbons so that you can unleash huge blocks of ribbon without getting a nasty snarl. So I'm going to try to prove to you this is 42 feet 4 inches. Watch carefully. The fingers never leave the hand, and I am not going to cheat you. Anybody want to lose 20 bucks real fast? I'll tell you this ribbon is between 42 and 43 feet long. Forget accurate. Why is that credible? Why is that credible? You're guessing I did about 5 foot. I tried to get one of these in there and one of these in there, but on average about 5 feet. How many did I get? 8, and there was a little bit left over. This is my goal. This is my goal. We're going to try to use a divide and conquer strategy. That's what we're going to talk about for the rest of our time together. So, the slides I think are on the conference proceedings. Here's the cheat sheet. If you want to increase your error, make sure people have no time to think about it. Okay? Make sure they can't see all of what's there. I think I told a joke at lunch yesterday, and one of the things I do for a living is do project reviews on really big projects, where systems integrators have to agree to contracts that say, the federal government hasn't published statistics about how Obamacare is going to work, but you have to commit to a fixed time and fixed schedule to implement whatever regulations they publish. That's a stupid question. Okay? And the vendors that answer it have to give them a stupid answer, and everyone acts surprised when the regulations come out that it may involve a change in requirements that's going to cost more and take longer. If you can't see it all, your estimates are going to suck more. Okay? Distractions. Distractions. You know how we deal with distractions in a large estimate? What we'll do is say, gosh, you know, this is a big confusing thing. Snip, let's give this to you because you're an expert in that. And now here's the database piece. Snip, you take the database piece. So we'll divide and conquer. Okay? No experience. Any of you seamstresses or seamsters in here? Any people do a lot of sewing? The people who do a lot of sewing tend to do a better job with the ribbon because they've got experience doing that. Okay? Experience will help. Things that are really complex. We're not good at estimating complex things. That's why we'll use a divide and conquer strategy and a moving target. Those are bad things. What helps? Chunking things up. Chunk it into 5 or 6 foot lengths. Now I can count to 8 and commit arithmetic. Things that are familiar. One of the reasons you did better with C than B is you had experience. Okay? Or we had the known point of reference when we asked Rick to stand up. Things that are well defined. Things we can get our brain wrapped around. We'll do better to the extent we can move things from one column to the next. So, here are the basics of estimation. Before you estimate anything, write down what it is you're estimating. I'll give you a quick example. I want to know how much would it cost to replace every computer in the building where you work. How much would it cost to replace every computer in the building where you work? Talk to me about, no, we're gonna swap it out for a technology upgrade. Good question. So talk to me. What are some of the things we'd want to have in that definition before we get out our crayons? What is a computer? What else? How many people? How many computers do we have to upgrade? What else? Time frame. Yeah, actually, that turns out that's interesting, because if I want to do it overnight, I can do that. It's going to be way more expensive. So are there any time constraints? What else? How fancy is the upgrade? Say again. How specific are the upgrade requirements? Give me an example. Okay. When she wants to do size differentiation, as if that might matter. What else? What's the building layout? Do I have to carry them up 30 flights of stairs? What about software? Does this include software? Does it include, well, yeah, tell that to the CEO. Does it include the labor of installation, or if I leave on loading dock, am I finished? Do I have to do the conversion? Do I have to do the cutover? Do I have to move the brains from one computer to the other? Oh, come on, users exist to provide a test load. It turns out if you took 60 seconds to write a definition, you'll come up with a better definition rather than saying, I don't know, 100 grand. No, let me explain. We're assuming we're replacing like with like. So we'll upgrade the engine to contemporary, but we're not giving anyone a Ferrari. We're going to double the amount of memory in them. We're going to have 3 sizes. We'll have servers, we'll have beefy machines for people to do hard work, and we'll have word processor machines for the admin staff. And our upgrade includes the cost of the brain transfer, but doesn't include any software upgrades. Okay? Just 60 seconds, and you'll have a better definition of what it is you're trying to do. Write it down. That's actually the best advice I'm going to give you all day. I'll try to dazzle you with some stuff later, but that's one of the best. Divide and conquer. Divide and conquer strategy. The project I was working on where we had to worry about the fancy thing at IBM, we actually, one of the things we did was we partitioned the problem. We partitioned the problem into the absolute magic of teaching computers to read. Okay, it was teaching computers to read really, really messy handwriting. In 1989, that was a much harder problem than it is today. And we had the other magic of building a relational database that supported arbitrarily large objects, which you can buy off the shelf now, but didn't exist in 1989. And so we partitioned that because the arbitrarily large objects was not hard. It was kludgy, but it wasn't hard. I knew how to do that. But the teaching computers to read was scary. And then there was a bunch of other stuff that was an application that created, read it, updated, and deleted data. That part was relatively straightforward. So we were able to decompose, and then we could focus on the scary parts. Break things into manageable hunks. We used to call that design. I don't know what they call it these days. You get extra credit if your hunks resemble things that you've done before. And set expectations. Here's what I know now, and here's when I'll be smarter. A big part of my message here is about setting expectations of what is an estimate, what's my confidence in this estimate, and when will I be smarter, because it's going to change. When you start discovering that a month from now you are dumber than you were today, it's time for the home. Okay? A month from now, you should be smarter than you are today. So if I ask you to estimate something today, work on it for a month, and ask you to revisit that estimate in a month, I would expect a more refined answer. An answer that you have more confidence in. Unless we thought this was easy, a month in we've discovered it's perpetual motion and anti-gravity, and we need to get a flag on the field because I misunderstood the size and complexity of the problem. So, there's a cheat sheet. What I want to do now is another demonstration. This is a quiz. I'm going to ask you 4 questions. I want a written, Michael, borrow a pencil. I want a written numerical answer from each of you to the following question. Written numerical answer from each of you. This is going to be one of the hardest quizzes you've ever taken. But you won't be graded, and it will not show up on your report card, so don't worry about that. For question A, I am going to give you only 3 seconds to come up with a written numerical answer. 3 seconds is not very long. Check it out. Go. 1 Mississippi, 2 alligator, 3. Done. That's it. That's all the time you have. You have only 3 seconds. So everybody take a deep breath. Let go of the stress. 3-second quiz. How many? How many? You'll recall from the 4th grade, questions that begin how many are word problems with a numerical answer. I don't want a range, I would like a specific number. You only have 3 seconds, get ready. How many? Make sure your pencil's working, because if you blow a pencil lead on a 3-second quiz, you're screwed. You only have 3 seconds, so get ready. How many? If you're the kind of person that chokes under pressure, you might want to pick a number right now. How many keys are in this room right now? Go! 1 Mississippi, 2 alligator. Write something down, 3, done. That's it, stop. Okay. Do not change what you wrote down for A. What we're going to do now, question B. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to answer question B. If you finish in 27 seconds, do not go back and change what you wrote for A. You're stuck with that. Honor system, okay? Question B. How many keys are in this room right now? Go! You have 30 seconds. Yes, it's the same question. You can come up with a whole different answer for B. Don't change what you wrote down for A. You have 25 seconds left. How many keys are in this room right now? Written numerical answer from each of you. Looking around is acceptable. Breathe through your nose, it'll be okay. 5, 4, 3, write some down. 2, 1, 0, blast off. Okay. Question C. I am going to give you 60 seconds to answer question C, and you may exchange information quietly with anybody within 10 feet of you. You have 60 seconds. How many keys are in this room right now? Go! You have 60 seconds. Go! Thirty seconds left. $15 seconds. Okay, written numerical answer from everybody. Write it down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, blast off. All right. When I chose birthdays before, I could tell some of you were disappointed. So, someone whose last name begins with L, call out a number. What'd you get for A, B, and C? Someone whose last name begins with M. How about an S? P. Wait a minute, 200, 2,600. B. Stubborn. C. One more, how about G? As a side note, when you're estimating really big crap you don't understand, avoid precision that gives people the wrong idea. Unless you're trying to BS them. In that case, it'd be 213.6. Okay, so this was a 2. So I'm going to do the same cheater's trick I did before. Throw away the high values, low values, take a look at the data. If you have an extreme outlier, see me after and I'll apologize. Okay, so throw away the high values, throw away the low values, leaves me on the low end with 200 and on the high end with 600. 200 to 600. Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. 108. 108 to 600. So variance factor of about 6. Come over here, throw away the high values, throw away the low values. Leaves me on the low end with a 450 and the high end with 2,000. 450 to 2,000. Variance factor of about 5. So the range is narrowed slightly. It's also trending up. Come over here, throw away the high values, nothing personal. Throw away the low values, nothing personal. High end, or low end and high end. So not a whole lot of change there. All right. So we do see the numbers creeping higher here. The average number here is a little higher than the average here. The ranges haven't changed too much. We could do some other statistical analysis, but help me understand, why did your numbers tend to change? My guess is most of you, your answer for B was significantly higher than A. Why? Huh? You had time to think about it. Okay, so if I gave you a month, could you think of the right answer? No, but a little bit of thought is useful, right? A little bit of time spent thinking. That's important. That's important. I can estimate anything you want in 5 minutes. If you give me 10, it'll be a slightly better number. At some point, you'll get to diminishing returns. Give me a year, I can come up with an even better number. I got paid $250,000 to do an estimate one time. It took me 18 months. I was answering the musical question for an application that doesn't currently exist. It's going to replace a bunch of manual processing, where 10,000 people share 5,000 workstations going across 250 servers to a mainframe in Boulder. How much CPU speed do they need in Boulder on the peak hour of the peak day of the year? It took 18 months, 105 versions of a spreadsheet, had a bunch of assumptions and did a bunch of math. And I finished before the project was ended. And I said, okay, you need X. And I called them after and I said, hey, how did we do when you guys finally came live? They said, well, we needed 2X. I went, damn, that was close. I got within an order of magnitude. That was mostly luck, I think. Okay? But yeah, if you have a little bit of time to think about it, you can come up with a little better. What did you do with the more time that you had? So more time we decided is helpful. More time. What do you mean you surveyed the room? What did you look for? He gathered data. I'm telling. Gathered data. Wow, gathered data. What'd you do with the data? He made an assumption. He assumed he was normal. Watch those assumptions, David. Yeah. Gather data, make assumptions, commit arithmetic. I just summarized the talk. Act surprised. There's more to say. Gather data. Make assumptions. Do math. That's the holy grail of estimation, boys and girls. The rest is in footnotes. What did you do differently the third time? Ooh, he summarized my point for me. Yeah. You talk to other people and discover you're probably not normal. Right? Mike. Like what? Boom! You don't get an A for the day, but you get an A for the morning. Okay? All right, that goes back to what I said a minute ago. Whenever you have to do an estimate, write it down. I didn't give you time to write it down, but that's really a good strategy is write it down, because as soon as you start writing it down, what you'll discover is there's definition questions. By the way, if I am working with two competent professionals, I'm working with Babak and Tho, and I ask you guys to estimate what I think is a did I say it right? Or is it Tho? Ta? Excuse me. So Ta and Babak, I ask you guys to estimate what I think is a comparable piece of work. I think it's a comparable piece of work. And Babak says, I can do that in 4 hours. And Tuss says, I can do that in 40 hours. Some people immediately jump to the conclusion, gosh, he does much better work than she does, right? You know what you might want to do is explore the definition. Hey, Babak, I was asking you to do this design. Talk to me. What is design? What's your process? He says, first, I get an Eskimo pie. I eat the Eskimo pie, open the wrapper up, wipe the chocolate off, and then I get a blunt crayon. I use this blunt crayon to build a crude flowchart of what the system has to do. That's my design. We asked Ta, what are you doing? You're supposed to be building this design. What do you do? She says, well, first, I build all my test cases. Then I build a complete data dictionary. Then I get this big E-size drawing of all of the data flows and interfaces, color-coded and tied back to the requirements. Suddenly it becomes clear why it takes her 40 hours and why it takes him 4, and we need to figure out what did we want. If the definitions suck, the estimates will suck. Okay, so what I wanted to do was share with you the secret estimation process. Here's the secret estimation process. Document what's being estimated, okay, and what's excluded. What's included and what's excluded. Let's write down the definition. Identify relevant factors. You know what? I'm not going to read this to you. I'm going to show it to you. Here's my estimate of how many keys are in the room. We're going to do something right now some of you have never done before. We're going to compare your estimates to the actuals. Here's what I want to do. Let's break the room in half right here. So you are on that side and you are on that side, okay? I want you to count them up. I want you to show me your keys. So you count your keys, and then you pass that information to this person who has to add. They add their keys and they pass it to the ends. Let me define a key. A key is a piece of plastic or metal or electronics that opens a lock. If you have a little chirpy thing, you go chirp, and your car opens, that's a key. If you have a badge that unlocks a door, that's a key. If you have a can opener that opens a bottle, you shouldn't drink as much. You shouldn't be carrying that to a conference. So, I want you to count it up and pass it that way. We're going to count the actual keys in this room. Okay, when the number gets to the end of the row, pass it forward and commit arithmetic. Travis, I have 8 keys. We can go on the honor system or I can show you. Don't add me to your total. What do you guys have in the cheap seats? You're passing it forward? Thank you. 118. Next row. Say again. 47. $24? Oh, I missed you guys, sorry. How many? 38. It's in my best interest to not skip you, so keep me honest. 17? All right, Travis, you had these up while I get information from these guys, okay? Okay, how about in the back? 51? You didn't copy, did you? Say again? 60. $24? Okay. Did I miss anybody on this side? We got everybody on this side? Oh, and I have 8. Say again? Probably wrote a little denser. And I think you guys combined a couple of rows. You got a total for here? 442. Anybody total this up yet? Usually there's like an overachieving A-type who's already done by now. Okay, 93, 102, 70, 84, 13, 161, 195, 199, 279, 280, 340. Wow, you guys are mutants. So my estimate was 116.8. Let me show you how I got there. First, I wrote my definition down. That was what Mike was wanting to do. I didn't give you time for that. Second, by the way, this is a general purpose process. You can use it anywhere. Identify relevant metrics. What do you wish you knew? What do you wish you knew? I wish I knew how many people were in the room, how many keys each of them had, and how many keys were in my pocket. That's what I wish, because I'm not like David. I don't assume I'm normal. Okay, so I had to gather data. I had to do this morning before you showed up. So I assumed we were going to have about 80% of the people in here, and I counted about 220 chairs. So I said, okay, well, I'm assuming that it's about 80% of 220, and 6.3 keys each. Where do you suppose that comes from? I've done this before. I've been keeping records. 6.3. And then I knew I had 8. Okay, I didn't get the benefit of a consult. Okay, if this nice lady here in the purple sweatshirt had lifted her sweatshirt and had one of them key rings with thousands of keys on it, you guys would have been much smarter for the third question than I can be. But I didn't get the benefit of the consult. But I do the math. Here's the key part. Show your work. Show your work. See, I reserve the right, now that I've done a count, and so I tell you there's about 148 people, plus or minus. 148 people is what I got when I counted. I reserve the right to change my estimate, because when I made the estimate, I didn't know how many people were in the room. At 6.3 keys each, plus 8, and I came up with that, which is going to be an overstatement, because there's, 30 people didn't show. 30 times 6. So I can legitimately subtract about 180 out of this. I'm still going to be high. I'm still going to be high. But puts me down to what, around 950? Within about 20%. Let's go back and look at your answers. Who's the 825? 825, take a bow. Bunch of you guys suck, though. You can use this process. You can use this process. What I want to do is talk with you a little bit about what happens when you try to use that process. A key idea for me when I have to estimate something is I usually don't have perfect information at the start. And so what I do is document the assumptions that went into the estimate. That gives me the opportunity to come back and say, you know what, yeah, this was my guess when I don't know how many people were in the room, but I reserve the right to change it because I have more information. Now you have to worry about this because humans are not really good at assumptions. If I had a magic wand and it could only grant you one superpower to make you a better project manager, the superpower I would grant you is the ability to detect your own assumptions. Because what happens is your brain is basically lazy. And so there are no facts about the future. Everything we think we know about the future is based on assumptions. But the way your brain works is it makes an assumption, it looks for a little confirming evidence, and then it moves that assumption into the category of things that are true about the universe and don't require further consideration. So I want to do a little demonstration. I brought my magical assumptions card. It's got one spot on this side, and 4 spots on this side, 3 spots on this side, and 6 spots on this side. This is going to trouble some of you later. Okay, 1, and 4, and 3, and 6. What's going on with the magical assumptions card? How many spots on the magical assumptions card? 5. But if I hold it like this and tell you there's 4, that's plausible. And if I hold it like this and tell you there's 6, that's plausible. As an amateur magician, I can tell you, if I want to fool you, what I do is get you to make assumptions and then reinforce them, and then I got you by the short hair. Okay, how many spots on this side? 2. So you got it figured out, right? It's 5 and 2. Okay. That's going to trouble some of you later, too. Explain it to the people that... Okay, so when we talk about assumptions, let me find my little clicky thing. What did I do with my clicky thing? There it is. Assumptions are placeholders for things we're not sure of. I've heard people say, well, I can't estimate this. I don't know X. Make what you think is a reasonable assumption about X. Write it down, circle it in big red crayon. Say, I don't know the answer to this. I don't know how many computers there are. But if I assume there's 100 computers, and I assume there's 3 flavors, and there's the $10,000 flavor, the $3,000 flavor, and the $500 flavor, and I assume it's 20%, 70%, 10%, I can commit arithmetic and tell you crudely how much it's going to cost based on those assumptions. Right? So assumptions are these placeholders for what we don't know. We need to know the difference between assumptions and other. The future is uncertain. And so what we want to do is recognize that assumptions are essential because we don't know what the future is like. So if we're estimating, well, I think this system is going to be 6 months and $2 million. Like, why? Because I assume it's like the system we did last year. Let's write that down. To the extent this system is identical to that one, here's what we expect. Now let's talk about how might they be different. Well, it has more interfaces, and it's got more complex data. And that had an existing code base, and this we're starting with white paper. It's like, oh, okay, so wait a minute. That says that they're not the same. Let's explore how they're not the same, and perhaps that will be informative. It is easy to mistake assumptions for the truth. I was having the lunch talk yesterday, and someone was talking about estimates that were inflicted on them, right? The boss came down and said, he estimated my work at X. And so I don't want to encourage you to be a rabble-rouser. Bring in consultants to be rabble-rousers because we were looking for a job before we showed up. But what you want to do is get very diplomatic and say, great, what were the assumptions underlying that? And watch the point here at boss go, what do you mean? What were your assumptions about the size and the complexity and the team size? And availability, yeah. Excellent. That gets back to the no multitasking, which I firmly agree with and I recognize is almost impossible in our current stupid world. Yeah, what are your assumptions about size, availability, complexity, tool availability? When can we start? What about the stability of the requirements? I saw the most terrifying statistic about a year ago, and then Capers he said the same thing in passing, and the fact that a hush did not murmur through that murmurs didn't run through the crowd surprised me. He said in passing, and I heard someone a year ago say, you can expect requirements to change about 2% per month. That should terrify you. I'm waiting for some, show me the data. I'd like to see it. Intuitively, that sounds about right to me. But that should terrify you. Do you know what that means on a 5-year project? You can never get to end of job. It's receding on the horizon like a mirage. When you get about halfway, it's not the same system anymore, which is true. Think about this. If you've worked on large IT systems, when you get partway through, the systems you have to interface with have changed. New laws are in effect. New regulations are in effect. We've swapped out the whole team 2 or 3 times. Easy to mistake assumptions for truths. So what I want to do, we talked about how to build an estimate. What I want to do now is talk about how to present an estimate. How to present an estimate. April had great plans for her picnic. And she remembers what the weatherman told her. I want you to think about this. If you live in Portland and you wanted to have a picnic a week from today, you could listen to what the weatherman said, but how likely is it that it's going to hold in a week? And yet we do not burn the weatherman at the stake. We expect, stuff happens. However, if we ask Devendra, how long is this going to take, and when, how much is it going to cost? And he says, well, I figure it's going to take about 25 months and cost about $3 million. Someone wants to write that down as a commitment, right? 25 months. So that's, let's see, November 2015. What day? We chose the wrong profession. We should have been weathermen. But it's a reasonable question. I don't want to say it's not reasonable to ask questions about estimates. It's reasonable to ask questions about estimates, but when we provide estimates, we need to set expectations appropriately. So the thing we have to realize is time flows this way. As we go forward and start chewing up the project, we start being able to swap real data, facts, for the assumptions that were underpinning our original guess. And as time passes, we should be able to refine those estimates. That's the important thing to communicate to the executives, okay? When you give an estimate, what you need to let people know is this is my best guess for now. And here's what we could do to improve the estimate. We could do a prototype of this really hard thing where right now I'm really throwing darts. It's bigger than a bread box, smaller than a house, but a month's worth of prototyping, a couple people over here for a month, make it bigger, make it smaller, but we'll have more confidence in that piece. This is where we could buy information to improve the estimate or eliminate variability. Here's when we'll be smarter. We can talk about the timeline. When in the timeline are we going to have a better idea about being able to swap out some of the assumptions that we know are placeholders. We know we're not smart until we talk to the users, until we get these stories laid out, until we get the details of that interface. We're guessing. We got a placeholder. We will be much smarter there. So, Tim Lister, I stole this from him completely because it was a brilliant idea. When we talk about hurricanes, I love this weather model, weather metaphor. We talk about hurricanes. Have you ever seen a hurricane projection map? It looks something like this. What they say is, you are here. This is where the storm is right now. And they use these massive computer models to guess where is the storm going to be a day out and 2 days out and 3 days out. And the little red line here is the most likely track of the hurricane. But, kind of like Michael Ma with his spready numbers, there's an upper and lower bound. They said, look, this is our best guess. We feel confident it's going to be somewhere in that range, but all bets are off, right? It's going to be somewhere in that range. Our best guess is here, but the farther we go out, take a look at this. Right here, what we're saying, day 4, it's going to be somewhere in the Gulf of Mexico, right? That makes sense. Intuitively, that makes sense. I got a pretty good idea that in 60 seconds, I can tell you where the storm's going to be. In an hour, it's a little squishier. In a day, it's squishier. We need to be able to do the same thing when we present estimates. Here's my best guess. Now, this talk is a derivative of some work I've been doing for the better part of 25 years. And for the first 20, I was so happy if I could come up with a point estimate with underlying assumptions, I was ready to stop. And in the last 5 years, I've actually tried to expand my brain a baby step. It looks like a big step, but it's a baby step. And talk about range estimates. And I think that range estimates are where we need to go with this. I think range estimates are where we need to go with this. I want you to imagine doing the same task. You doing the same task 100 times. You do a task 100 times, exact same task. However, what I'm going to do every morning when you start this task is I'm going to give you a drug that makes you forget everything you've done in the last 3 days. So you get to do the exact same task. Not everything you learned in school, not everything you learned last week, but everything you learned in the last 3 days, whoosh, gone. So you're going to do this exact same task, same environment, same you, same definition, exact same task 100 times. But you have no knowledge of your prior events. So you're not going to get better with time. Now imagine we graphed how long, what was the duration, how long did it take you to do that? And we graphed it. So let's just imagine it's about 35 hours worth of work. Just pretend, okay? 35 hours worth of work. Well, there was the time that you did that in 3 days because your significant other was either wasn't home or maybe your in-laws were visiting and you didn't want to go home and the office was quiet and you pulled 3 tens. And then you were having such, you were just, the thrill of the kill. You could taste the blood in your mouth and you really wanted to press. And so you pushed on the last day just so you could say you were done. And that was the best case. That happened once out of your 100 times. And then there were a couple of times where you were just kind of in the groove and it took you 3.5 days. And then there was the lion's share where it took you about 4.5 days to do the work. That was most of it. That probably accounts for 40% maybe. Was 3 days, 3 to 4 or 5 days was probably 40% of your occurrences. But you did it 100 times. So there was also the time where you got interrupted. There was an all-hands meeting. It's not that it took you more than 35 hours, but you were compelled to multitask. Or your kid fell off his bicycle, broke his leg, and you had to go take him to the doctor, and it disrupted your schedule a couple of days. Or there was a power failure, or there was a fire drill, or just stuff happened. Or you started the task before you went on vacation. And if you did the same task, exact same task, you are, I consider you pretty consistent. You're quality geeks after all. You did the same task 100 times, and we graphed your completion. What we would see is there's a variety of different answers. So given that data, what's the best estimate? There isn't a best estimate. The best estimate would be the range. Here's the scary thing for you statistics geeks. Most of that range is late. So, for example, who are my project managers in here? Quick show of hands. Had to build schedules, a couple of you. If I build a critical path schedule and I use the most likely duration, my schedule is going to suck. Wait a minute, my schedules do suck. What's he saying? Yeah, it turns out if we can start talking about task completions or estimates as a probability distribution, there's a bunch of information hiding in there. I'm not going to go into the weeds talking about that today. I just want to whet your appetite. You project management geeks, see me after. I'll show you more about what I'm talking about. As individuals, what I want to encourage you to do is start thinking of your estimates in terms of ranges. So if you're estimating how many keys were in the room, you could say, look around real quick and say, let's see. I don't know, looks like this room would hold 200, 250 people. It's about half saturated. If I assumed 125 people at 6 keys each, that puts me into the right ballpark. So if you said, well, let's see, somewhere between 40 and 60% saturated, somewhere between 5 and 7 keys each, now we can calculate a range estimate that does 2 things. First, it gets me past giving my boss David this is going to take 17 months and you walk off and it gets published in the company newsletter, right? It gives me a chance to say, you know what, I think with what we know now, barring fire, flood, earthquake, natural disaster, with what we know now, barring extreme circumstance, this is probably 12 to 20 months. 17 is my best guess. That's interesting. That gives him a sense of, oh, so 17 could be as soon as 12, could be as much as 24 months. It also might encourage him to ask some questions. What can I do to narrow the range? Now we can talk about where could I do research projects, where could I buy information to eliminate some of the uncertainty in the range. So, having talked about this, I want to give you a chance to practice. We can use this, in fact, I'll put this back up. I want to use this process and have you estimate. I want you to break into teams of 3 or 4 or 5. Okay? Here's what I want you to estimate. How many basketballs would it take to fill this room? Inflated basketballs, regulation size. You have 10 minutes. Go. Floor to ceiling. How many basketballs would it take to fill this room? Break into teams. I don't care about the answer, I care about your process. Okay. So I want to walk you through the process. I'm hoping you had a chance to practice. Relevant factors. What do you wish you knew in order to answer this question? Say again? What do you wish you knew? Are the balls inflated? Well, that was part of the definition, but if it wasn't, you could document that assumption. What else do you wish you knew? Say again? Size of a basketball. So size of a basketball. Okay, in terms of volume, how many basketballs can I fit in 10 cubic feet, right? What else do you wish you knew? Size of the room. What else? Okay, packing pattern. What else? Is the room otherwise empty? Say again? Yeah. Okay, so you know what? That's pretty good, and you're not professional basketball estimators, but you did a pretty good job of teasing out the significant relevant factors. All right? What were the assumptions that you used in terms of the size of a regulation basketball? You put in a box that squares. Okay. In a cubic box. What other assumptions did you find interesting? What did you write down? What else? What other assumption did you make? Say again? That the room stops here. What were your assumptions about the size of the room? Yeah, it's kind of a strange room, huh? So did you use some simplified? By the way, that's where the term comes from. I'm a big fan of simplifying assumptions. Well, if I assumed the room was rectangle rather than trapezoidal. Yeah, just document that, right? I could do trapezoids, but I don't remember that much geometry. Okay, so yeah, we're assuming that stuff doesn't count. What did you assume for the volume? Volume, what's the volume of the room? Come on, some of you did numbers. Say what? 120,000 cubic feet. What did you come up with? A range, 40 to 60,000? Awesome. So how big was the chunk you estimated? Yeah? Cool. So you put 2,400 balls there and then commit arithmetic. I like it. Nice way to chunk things up. You cheater. Awesome. What were some other assumptions about the volume of the room? So what'd you assume was a 7-foot doorway or an 8-foot doorway? 7 foot, okay. And then use that to kind of chunk up. Okay, that's a cool idea. So yeah, width of the seat, what's the width of the seat? About 2 feet? Awesome. Okay, what were your answers that you came up with? Those of you brave enough to say something out loud. Ooh, range with a most likely. 70 to 80,000. What else? 40 to 60. 60 to 80. $600,000. Okay. 80 to 190. 180 to 190 or 80 to 190? Oh, 82,000 to 90,000? 190. Okay. Big range. 130 to 160? All right. So pay attention carefully to what I'm going to say next. I'm not going to pay you to do this. But if I did, imagine there was a $10,000 cash prize and you only had an hour. What might you do differently? You had an hour, $10,000 cash prize, whoever's closest. Pretend I knew the answer. Get a measuring tape. What else would you do differently? Get a basketball, measure it. Awesome. All right, what if you had a day, just kidding, and there was $1 million prize? What would you do? Huh? Fill it up with balls? Get a team to help you? Come on, what would you do differently? You had a day. Get ladders. So we could do a better job of measuring. In an hour, you probably couldn't, but in a day, you could come up with a much better measure. What else could you do? Buy a bunch of basketballs and put them in and figure out the packing patterns. Okay, so what else? What other ideas you got? Go get the blueprint. This is where you will discover that I was stunned because I thought architects were much more refined engineers than us. It turns out that the builders don't follow the specs any more than coders follow the specs. Here's my point. There's not a right answer. When someone asks you for an estimate, actually a fair question back to them is, what's a good answer worth to you? How much time and energy are you willing to invest to have me develop this estimate? If there was a $10 million cash prize and you had a week, get a dump truck full of basketballs, right? But if you only have a day, assemble a box that's 10 by 10 by 10, fill it with basketballs from the local sporting goods store, and then get a good measurement and commit arithmetic. If you're willing to spend more time and more money, you can come up with a refined estimate to the point of absurdity, right? You want to know exactly how much it's going to cost and how long it's going to take? Let me build it and keep records, and I'll tell you. But if you want to predict it, by the way, that won't work. Because if I did the same project twice, it's going to take a different amount of time each time, right? Imagine we actually filled the room with basketballs, and you did it, and then you did it, and then you did it. These are both these three guys that come up with the same answers? No. So what's the right answer? Doesn't matter. What's the appropriate, what do you need? A rough order of magnitude to get you in a ballpark. Looking over here, we seem to have a whole lot of energy at about 60,000. I'm curious. Maybe we'll have to fill this room with basketballs tomorrow and get a better guess. But think about this. When someone asks you for an estimate, all you can do is say, okay, here's what I think is relevant. Here's the guesses I had to make. Here's a range. And here's what I could do if you wanted to buy a better answer. If you wanted to invest in getting a better answer, here's where I could do prototyping. Here's where I could bring in a subject matter expert. Here's where I could go to Google and figure out how big the box is that has the basketballs in it. So what I want to do now is basically, I'm hoping that you got some ideas from what we said. What I want to do now is answer any questions that you might have about estimates, estimating basketballs, keys, different problems. So the grail of project management looks like this. To calculate resources, we have to make assumptions about scope and schedule. To calculate schedule, we have to make assumptions about resources and scope. So what you're saying is really true. Knowing the number of basketballs would be input into a calculation of how long it was going to take. That's a separate calculation. The number of basketballs would be scope. Then we have to say how many people are doing this. One sick Cub Scout with no wheelbarrow? Or, everybody in the room helping you do basketballs in an hour or two. Do we cut a hole in the roof, or do we have to come up through bore a hole through the basement? Questions? Okay, so testing, guys, it sucks to be you. Because the question people often ask you is, well, how long is this going to take? And of course, the best answer is, I don't know, how crappy is the code? Right? Someone asked this question yesterday. So without being flippant, typically what we're saying is, okay, what's the time allocation? What are my assumptions going to be? What is my assumption about fault density? What's my assumption about the quality of the code that this team has produced in the past? So I'll look to historical data wherever I can. That'll be the starting point. What are some of the factors? So if I said, okay, so let's imagine the history says 16 weeks. When should I know better if that 16 week is looking sketchy? Second week, third week in, we say, okay, well, if we're assuming it's like the last project, or we're assuming the fault density is going to be similar to the other project, we would crudely expect this kind of an arrival rate. We expect this caliber of fault. We expect this, this velocity of rework and fixes. Are we seeing that? This is not a magical elixir. Estimating testing and estimating invention are very hard things because there's a whole lot of unknown. But it's a reasonable question. So what we say is, look, if we make assumptions that it's going to be like the last time, and we assume it's 16 weeks, that doesn't say it's going to take 16 weeks. That's the guess. And I'll be able 2 weeks in to give you a refined guess, and 4 weeks in to give you a refined guess, and 6 weeks in, so that I can help reset your expectations. And that's the best I can do for you. Other questions? Yes? No, I'm going to have a garage sale at the end and sell off the basketballs. Other questions? I want to thank you please. When reasonable people are disagreeing, they're often working with different definitions or different assumptions. And if you take the time to understand what the assumptions are and the definitions are, you can often eliminate the sources of variance. What will happen, though, is sometimes you and I will be at odds. Because I think it's going to be big and ugly. You say, I think it's going to be simple. What we need to do is agree on an assumption. If we agree on this assumption, what's it going to be? If we agree on this assumption, what's it going to be? And then we can go and say, okay, if it's big and ugly, it's going to be this. And if it's relatively straightforward, it's going to be this. Which assumption would you like us to use, boss? The warm foot, that's fine. I want to thank you very much for the chance to come to Portland and play with you. If you have any questions, go ahead and fire them off to email. If you're playing with me tomorrow in the quality management workshop, I look forward to that. Enjoy your day. Thank you.